If we rewind the clock on the Indian subcontinent back to 300,000 BC, the towering architecture of the modern age vanishes, leaving behind an empty prehistoric landscape. We are left with a central question: how did the first humans arrive in this wilderness? Radiation theory suggests our species originated in Africa and migrated outward. However, parallel evolution theory argues multiple Homo erectus populations evolved simultaneously in different regions, occasionally intermingling. This map shows those overlapping borders. For decades, India lacked the fossil records to participate in this debate. But in 1982, a geologist discovered the Hathnora skull in the Narmada Valley. This Narmada man specimen possessed a larger brain capacity than typical Homo erectus fossils, placing the subcontinent at the center of global evolutionary research. Regardless of their exact point of origin, these early inhabitants faced a common, immediate challenge: surviving the shifting, often lethal climate of the Pleistocene. During the Ice Age, prehistoric India was defined by severe, unpredictable conditions. Glacial cycles created a landscape that demanded constant physical adaptation from any group attempting to settle there. Controlling fire allowed these groups to survive where they previously would have perished. It provided the necessary warmth to move through colder regions and served as a physical barrier against the predators that shared their habitat. Cooking food over these flames eliminated many of the diseases carried by raw meat. This dietary shift helped the most vulnerable members of the group, particularly children and the elderly, survive to old age. Because the fire provided safety, groups could gather in larger numbers for longer periods. The campfire became a physical anchor, a place where people remained stationary enough to exchange information and coordinate their activities. By providing a consistent point of protection and a shared space for interaction, fire allowed small, vulnerable groups to function as more resilient, organized communities. We see the physical results of this social organization in the Bhimbetka caves of central India. These rock shelters contain a massive visual record of how early humans viewed their world and their place within it. These red and white paintings show dense clusters of human figures engaged in communal dancing and coordinated hunts. The artists even included early religious symbols, signaling a level of social complexity that extended beyond basic survival. As the Ice Age ended around 8000 BC, the climate warmed and the environment changed. The massive animals of the previous era were replaced by smaller, faster prey, requiring a change in hunting technology. These are microliths. By chipping stone into these tiny, razor-sharp blades and mounting them into wood or bone, Mesolithic hunters created lightweight, compound weapons capable of taking down fast-moving animals from a distance. With these specialized tools and the ability to coordinate their efforts, early Indian communities began to actively manipulate their environment rather than simply reacting to it. Between 8000 and 4000 BC, many groups in the subcontinent moved away from nomadic wandering. Instead of following the seasonal migration of animals, they began to stay in one place to cultivate their own food. The first known village of this kind was Mehrgarh, located in the northwest. By 6000 BC, the inhabitants here had established a stationary lifestyle based on a predictable harvest. At Mehrgarh, we see the first use of mud brick architecture to create permanent homes. These people domesticated cattle and cleared land for wheat and barley, establishing a cycle of food production that could support a year-round population. This period also saw the development of the wheel. Watch as this potter's wheel spins, shaping wet clay into a vessel. Long before it was used for transportation, the wheel was a tool for manufacturing the pottery needed to store and protect surplus grain. The combination of a steady food supply and the weight of permanent architecture meant that these groups no longer needed to move. They were now tied to specific plots of land, forming the first stable villages in the region. By 1800 BC, people were using copper and bronze, but these metals were too soft for heavy labor. They lacked the strength to clear the dense, ancient forests or plow the heavy, water-saturated soils found in many parts of India. Around 1000 BC, the arrival of iron technology changed what was physically possible. Iron was harder, more abundant, and could be forged into tools that maintained a sharp edge under extreme pressure. As you can see, an iron axe was capable of splintering thick timber that would have bent or broken a copper blade. Using iron plows, farmers could finally break the thick, fertile earth of the Ganges Valley, opening up vast new territories for cultivation. This expansion into the Ganges Basin created a massive agricultural surplus. For the first time, the land produced far more food than the people living on it could consume, allowing for a total restructuring of society. Iron didn't just provide better tools, it provided the means to expand the human footprint across the subcontinent, moving the population away from the hills and into the fertile plains. When a community has more food that it needs to survive, the labor force begins to change. With grain stores full, large numbers of people were freed from the daily tasks of farming. They became specialized craftsmen, traders, and builders, leading to the rapid growth of large, permanent settlements by the 6th century BC. This photograph of the ancient stone architecture of Varanasi shows the result of that transition. These cities were built on the back of the agricultural surplus made possible by iron, growing into centers of trade and religious life. These urban centers introduced the first silver and copper coins, establishing trade networks that connected distant regions. They built complex fortifications and defense systems, marking the emergence of organized political power. Through the mastery of fire, the stabilization of farming, and the strength of iron, wandering populations were gradually transformed into the organized citizens of